Good morning. My name is not Barbara Stasiak, and so if you came expecting to see Barbara, please stick around for the second service. Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship, where we covenant to weave together the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. We are an inclusive, welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We do have a few announcements this morning. The worship arts team will be planning some lay-led services for the year ahead, and we welcome any and all ideas that any of you might have for upcoming services. You can participate with our team at any level that is comfortable for you. You can help with the service on a Sunday. You can offer an idea for a Sunday service, and you can help develop and create a service. Any and all ideas from any and all ages are always welcome. You can talk to or email our new worship arts chairperson, Lori Cross, or any members of the committee. Important announcement, very important. On Memorial Day weekend, we go to one service at 10 a.m. And for those of you who have lost track of the calendar, that's next weekend. And our last announcement by the tall guy, Harry Harris, for the tall guy, Harry Harris. Harry, our assistant treasurer, will be available in between services in room 100 to discuss and answer any of your questions regarding the 2022-2023 MUF budget. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I invite you to join me in our unison chalice lighting words this morning. These are by James Villa Blake. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in our opening song, number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might sang a song of love and arose in the winter time.
Thank you. So good to be together again. So I have a story for you this morning for our Time for All Ages. This is by Monica Arnaldo, and it asks the question, are you a cheeseburger? This is Grub. Grub is a raccoon, and he is all by himself, see? And here is Seed. Seed is a seed, of course, and he is stuck in the trash. This particular seed and this particular raccoon had very little in common, except at that moment they were both in the same garbage can. "Hello," said Seed. Grub continued rooting around. "Oh, you're busy. Well, that's all right. I'm busy too." Grub stopped. "You are?" Yeah, I'm looking for someone to plant me in the ground so I can start growing." Grub eyed the seed hungrily. "Will you grow food?" "I'm not sure," Seed admitted. "Could you grow cheeseburgers?" "What is a cheeseburger?" Well, Grub considered this. Something very good and very special." Maybe we'll just have to wait and see." Grub had never seen a cheeseburger plant before, but he liked the sound of it. So he planted Seed right away. "Now what?" Grub asked. Seed's voice called up faintly from underground. "Now we wait." "Huh," Grub's stomach growled. "How long?" "I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see." The two spent every evening together from moonrise to moonset. Grub tried to be patient, but Seed began to wonder, what if he wasn't a cheeseburger plant? What if he was something else entirely? To help pass the time, they told stories. Grub told Seed about the top 3 cheeseburgers he had ever eaten. Number 1, half a cheeseburger, barely moldy. Number 2, a piece of cheeseburger bun with some mustard on it wrestled away from seagulls. And number 3, a greasy paper wrapper Grub could tell had once contained a cheeseburger. Seed told Grub all about the interesting things he saw down in the earth. Number 1, a long worm tunneling. Number 2, a slightly shorter worm tunneling. Number 3, 2 average-sized worms tunneling, one right after the other, over so that they seem like one extremely long worm. "What is happening down there?" Grub asked. Seed looked around. "Well, it is dark. What is happening up there?" "Oh, it's dark too. Later, though, the sun will rise." "Oh, what is that like?" Seed asked. "I'm not sure," Grub confessed. "I'm always asleep then, but I have heard that it is like a cheeseburger, very good and very special." Both alone in the dark, Grub and Seed tried to picture the sunrise. Slowly, things began to change. "Hello again," said Seed. "Seed, you are out of the ground!" "Yes," said Seed proudly, "I am growing." And that evening, Grub and Seed celebrated. Grub had a greasy piece of cardboard he was almost certain had once been the bottom of a pizza box. Seed had water. To the future! Sure and steady, Seed kept growing and growing. The cheeseburgers were nearly at hand. Finally, one morning just before sunrise, Seed bloomed. "Oh," said Seed. "Are the cheeseburgers ready?" asked Grub. "Grub," Seed started, "I do not think I am a cheeseburger plant. I think I'm just a flower." "A flower? Yes. Not a cheeseburger plant. So no cheeseburgers then. No cheeseburgers. Grub was quiet for a long time. What is it? Seed asked. I am thinking, Grub said. About cheeseburgers? No. About flowers. Oh, well, what are you thinking about flowers? I am thinking that flowers are good and special too. Maybe even more special than cheeseburgers. More special than cheeseburgers? Seed gasped. Well, the same. This is seed. Seed is a flower. See? And this is grub. Grub is a gardener. They don't have any cheeseburgers, but they do have each other. And that is something very good and very special.
Please join us in singing our children off to their RE classes, number 402. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Now is the time in our service where we give and receive our weekly offering. We believe that generosity changes lives. It changes the lives of people in our community, and it changes our own lives. Every week, 50% of the offering goes to support our good work here at the fellowship, and 50% goes to support the good work of a nonprofit organization in our community. Thank you.
I can see clearly now, the rain has gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, oh bright, sunshiny day. Gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. I think I can make it now, the pain has gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. Gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Gonna be a bright, oh bright, sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue skies. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. Gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day.
Wow. I'm really touched. I didn't realize until this minute how much I missed hearing you sing, Stearns. What a blessing it has been to have him here, has it not? I invite you to join me now in a spirit of prayer, meditation, whatever it is that calls to your heart. Maybe it is a quiet reflection. Maybe it is a silent pleading. Maybe it is just the unspoken yearnings of your heart. Find a place of comfort and start with the breath. Take a deep breath in if you can and let it out. Imagine as you take this next breath in that you are connecting with the solidness of the very earth below you. And take a deep breath in and let it out. Spirit of life, the God that we may refer to by many names or by no name at all, for you cannot be contained in any name. The God of process, the God of nature, the God of wonder, the God of awe, the Spirit that moves in community. We gather together again. Some of us gather because we have something to bring to this space and to this moment, and we know what it is. Some of us perhaps gather not knowing what our hearts need, but somehow believing that here in community we may find it together. And some of us just do what we can. And all of it is sacred. Ours is a complicated world. We know that. We face challenges. We face an unknown future. We face change. But we always have. And we always will, because it's part of the process of being alive. But when we are in doubt, when we are uncertain, when we feel we need to know that everything is going to be all right, may we remind ourselves that it is together, in community, in religious community, that we find some hope, some solace. For those who are hurting this morning, may the Spirit of life pour out love and light and care. For those who are anxious this morning, may the Spirit of possibility settle your soul. For those who are joyous this morning with hope bursting all around you, may this be a place where that too is celebrated. Each of us, as we are, and yet somehow all of us together. May it indeed be so.
I'm going to invite you to stay seated if you like and sing number 1052, The Oneness of Everything. Far beyond the grasp of hands or light to meet the eye, past the reaches of the mind, there find the key to nature's harmony in an architecture so entwined, like the birds whose patterns grace the sky and carry all who join in love expanding. The message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings, in the oneness of everything. Peace is in the dance of trees who stir before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of lives long past that touch our own are written in the earth ever giving, and now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives worth living, for the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find a truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space, also overwhelmingly designed. Oh, passing years, just might I know the faith that winters in the heart to be reborn in spring, to hear and to feel the pulse of life enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of everything.
Let me begin by just saying again what a joy it is to be with you. This congregation will forever hold a place in my heart for the 2 years I spent here as your intern, and it is good to be back. You know, many people around the world during the last few years have turned to gardening. Fruit and vegetable seed sales have soared worldwide. In addition to easing concerns about food security and distribution and supply chain issues, for so many people, gardening has also served as a certain kind of coping mechanism. Many have found it soothing in a time of high anxiety and uncertainty. In December of 2021, the American Society of Horticultural Science published an article that was looking at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on gardening in the United States. Part of what the article says, because of lockdowns, consumers changed their buying habits. They changed not only how much they were purchasing, but also what they purchased and how they made those purchases. As a result of the lockdowns, the green industry experienced an estimated 8% increase in revenues for plant and landscape items, things like pots and fertilizers. And that's from January 2020 to July 2020 compared with the same period in 2019. And the statistics seem to be similar for this latest year. In March 2020, the Burpee Seed Company sold more seed than at any time in its 144-year history. Now, seed demand typically goes up during difficult economic times. That's not surprising. But the question is why so many people found themselves pulled towards gardening. And the answer to that question reveals some interesting insights. In one survey of more than 3,700 respondents, it was found that more than 75% said that they found immense value in gardening during this time. But interestingly, very few said that they were financially compelled to do so. So while food security may have played part of an equation, and let us admit, for some people, it may have been more than a rhetorical question. It may have been a question of existential survival. But for so many people, apparently, the gardening was about more than just producing food. Gardening, in a way, became a safe haven, a way of coping. And I will confess that you can count me among those who have given their hand at gardening a little bit during this pandemic. In fact, truth be told, I've invested a significant amount of time and energy this last year in some gardening. I think it's fair to say my wife might think a little too much. I also think that I should share that gardening is something that's always intrigued me. I've always thought about gardening. I grew up in a place where gardening was common, and my own parents had a garden for a couple of years when I was a kid, but as two self-employed parents, they found that there wasn't enough time to devote to the prospect of gardening. So I've thought over the years, I want to do this. I'm interested in doing this. Maybe I can make it happen. But truth is, I just never found the commitment to the time and the discipline that seemed like a prerequisite for that to be successful. But life for me has been something of a big transition in the last few years. The process of changing career and beginning ministerial formation has changed how I literally spend my waking hours. And you layer a pandemic on top of that, where we are stuck at home for long periods of time, and suddenly the thing that seemed out of reach became a little more attainable. So I decided to give it a try. But something else I realized is, for me, this is more than just about making the time for this to happen. I resonate strongly with those who have found the need for finding new ways of coping with stress during the pandemic. You may know something about what I'm talking about. The things that seemed to work before, that were the solace and the means of getting through the week, somehow didn't have the same impact. I needed something new. I needed something that touched a deep place of need. And for me, that experimentation was gardening. In other words, gardening was for me, has been for me, continues to be for me, an intentional spiritual practice. Now, I've spoken from this very pulpit before about Scott Alexander's wonderful book, Everyday Spiritual Practice. This UU minister asks, what makes an everyday spiritual practice different from a casual spiritual hobby? Something worthwhile that one simply dabbles in when one feels like it. And his answer is intentionality, regularity, and depth. That what shapes our efforts into an everyday spiritual practice is the commitment to making the activity a regular and significant part of your life. There's a chapter in that book on gardening as spiritual practice. That's written by Barbara Davenport. Barbara identifies lessons of gardening. She says gardening teaches how we are linked to the land. Gardening teaches self-reflection. Gardening teaches generosity. Gardening teaches patience. Gardening teaches us to believe in miracles. Gardening teaches us to marvel at the wonder. That's a pretty good list. And I have to say, I found a lot of that to be true for me in my experience. Now, I also want to point out something else. If you are one of the people listening to me today and you go, oh, I don't think gardening is for me, that's okay. I'm not suggesting that gardening itself is the answer in and of itself. I'm suggesting, though, that an intentional spiritual practice will pay you back dividends beyond what you can imagine. It may take some time to figure out what that practice is for you. It may take some experimentation. It may take a little commitment, but it's commitment worth the effort. Why is gardening such a spiritual practice for me? Well, I think in part the answer is, I think at the heart of the matter, gardening is an overly optimistic process. Maybe that's in part because so much of what you do in preparation is hope for what is yet to come. For example, maybe you start seeds indoors weeks before that expected last frost date, that date you can't be so sure about. That question about, is this the right time? Do I put them out now, or will I have spent my energies in vain? It is preparation for a season yet to come. You know, for some plants, depending on their particular needs, you may find yourself preparing a trellis in anticipation of what will be needed. Oftentimes, if you're trying to put the trellis in after the plant already needs it, it's a little too late. Gardening requires a little forethought, a little gazing into the possibilities of the future. You know, depending on the particular plant as well, the hope that we have to invest in gardening may extend far into the future. There are some harvests that are not a season away, but are years away. And God help you if you try to plant a fruit tree. It may be decades before you see any result of that effort. Oh my God, people, spiritual lessons abound. But I think not only does gardening tap into a sense of vision, a need to see beyond the moment, but also, almost invariably, it exposes a very hard truth. A hard truth, people. You know what's coming. Grand visions and careful planning aside, inevitably, things are not going to go as you planned. Maybe the most obvious example for this is the unpredictability of the weather. Drought can throw that proverbial curveball into the best laid plan, so to speak. And too much water can literally wash away your vision. Even when we have incorporated contingencies, and even when we have invested our time and resources into mitigating the unexpected, there is always, always, always that tickling voice at the back of your head that is warning you at some level, at any moment, it could all go badly. Ain't that life? You know, for some of us, that anxiety is more than an inconvenience. and an annoyance. For some of us, that anxiety is constantly dancing on the very question of survival. Interestingly, I think the very possibility that inevitably things are not going to go the way you planned, that there's going to be something that you have to respond to in the moment, that somehow makes the entire process even that much more remarkable. I might go so far as to call it audacious. And that may, in part, help account for why gardening is an oft-used metaphor in many religious traditions and spiritual practices, because it gets to the heart of something that's true about our human nature: audacity. One of my most favorite stories comes from the Christian tradition. This is a story attributed to Jesus. It's often referred to as the parable of the sower. Here's a version of that parable as told in the Gospel of Matthew. What do you make of this? A farmer planted seeds. As he scattered the seed, some of it fell on the road and the birds ate it. Some fell in the gravel, and it sprouted quickly, but it didn't put down roots. So when the sun came up, it withered just as quickly. Some fell in the weeds, and as it came up, it was strangled by the weeds. Some fell on good earth, and it produced a harvest beyond his wildest dreams. Are you listening? No. Are you really listening? Yeah, that resonates. If you've done any gardening, you might know something of that experience. The seed goes all over the place, and the conditions that you thought you knew may reveal themselves to be different than you thought of at the time. But the story just resonates, because there's nothing quite like a good, simple story, is there? Jesus was apparently really good at telling these stories, these parables. But this parable, like so many of the others that are attributed to him, ends with an interesting question. Are you listening? Are you really listening? You probably have heard it translated differently, something along the lines of, let those who have ears hear. But that's the real question. Are you listening? Are you really listening? You see, sometimes this structure indicates that the story being told is actually a little bit subversive. There's an invitation to hear between the lines, as it were. Frequently, the gospel writers would follow a parable with a description of the meaning of the parable. So Jesus often gathers with his most trusted circle who didn't understand the story, and he has to explain what it means. But many scholars believe that those explaining of the parables are later additions to the text, that they come about when a settled church is trying to enforce its orthodoxy, to make sure that everybody takes the same meaning from the parable. And that looks like it's the case here as well. Why do I say that? Because in the traditional interpretation of this parable, the sower is God. Okay, God's the one with the seeds. The seed is the word, and that's a potentially loaded religious term for many of us. But what that really would mean in the context of the first century church was the teaching of the church, the message of the church, the accepted doctrine that's being espoused. And that means, in the traditional interpretation of the parable, the most important aspect are the places in which the seed falls. That's what it's really about. Not a parable about the sower, not a parable about the seed, but a parable about the soil. You see, The seeds that fell on the road are people. People where the teaching just never even gets started. And the seeds that fall amongst the gravel are people who may initially get started, but they can't follow through, and so they don't stick with it. The seeds and the weeds are people who perhaps persist for longer, but ultimately they're choked out by the cares and concerns of the world. And finally, there are the seeds in the good earth. The good earth are the people who fully embrace what the church is pushing. They're the people who are part of us. That becomes the lesson of the parable. We really only want the good people. We really only want the good earth. If your life is lived in rocky gravel, you need not apply. That's a shame. That makes the parable, as interpreted, say nothing more than those who don't agree with us are somehow defective. They don't get it because there's something wrong with them. It's the equivalent of the modern day notion that we really only need to be concerned with those who are exactly like us. If you come here and you don't like it, something's wrong with you, not me. How disappointing. That doesn't sound very much like a subversive message, does it? In fact, one might say quite the contrary. It sounds like a message of the status quo to preserve the power that already exists. Let's label the people who won't do what we want as defective. Well, I imagine you can tell I don't go for that interpretation much. And what if we are willing to put that interpretation aside? What if we're willing to put aside what has been pounded into so many of our heads for thousands of years, and look at the actual simple story in the parable without preconception of what it means? What if we dare to listen, really listen? So as I listen to the story, really listen, what I hear is not a story about defective people. I hear a story about the audacity of the seed. You see, the seed, in its very nature, wants to germinate. Badly wants to germinate. So much so that even when conditions are horrid, it's gonna try. No matter what the condition of the ground in which it lands, seed's going to do what a seed does. Will it always succeed? No, because that's the way life is. For the seed to reach its fullest potential, it needs help, it needs water, it needs nutrients, it needs sun. Oh, but the miracle, when those conditions are all right, in balance, then something amazing happens. The seed may produce a harvest beyond our wildest dreams. This is not a story about the inadequacy of people. It is a story about possibility. It is a story about audacity. It is fundamentally a story about hope. See, that's my surprise. That's what I didn't expect from this whole gardening experiment. That what was going to emerge for me is a new theology of hope, a new understanding of hope. Not that casual dime store hope that gets bandied about, but real hope. Hope is not magical thinking. Hope is not a guaranteed outcome. Hope is not a substitute for preparation and hard work. Hope is dependent. It is interdependent. Hope is not the absence of struggle. Hope is not easy. But oh my God, do we ever need hope. You know, only time will tell how long this surge in gardening will be sustained. It might very well be that hobbies born of the unique circumstances of the pandemic recede quickly into the background as our time commitments change. Undoubtedly, there are some pandemic gardens that are probably already being badly neglected. And maybe that's okay too. But I do think that gardens can serve not only as places of beauty and sources of food, but also as tools for healing and coping and the possibility of insight into something bigger than ourselves. Because my gardening has been tied to an intentional spiritual practice, my expectation is that it will continue to be part of my practice, at least for as long as it serves me. But I've also learned in this pandemic to have the courage to let go of the things that don't. It's another lesson of gardening, isn't it? Sometimes you have to know when to throw in the towel on that particular thing. Sometimes you just have to let it go. So gardening for me has somewhat unexpectedly led to this process of discovering these new seeds of hope. I understand hope differently now. I cannot wait to see what may grow. I close with these words from Christopher and Tricia McDowell. There is a theology to gardening that few of us consider, but to understand this theology means relinquishing much control. Our arsenal of books, techniques, tools, chemicals, fertilizers, fancy hybrids, and even expectations. Yet, that is exactly what we must do if we are fully to embrace a more spiritual form of gardening. As a part of nature, we must learn to enter our garden as if it were truly sacred. We must learn to enter it with humility. And dare I say, with the audacity of hope.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in our closing song, number 1015, I Know I Can.
Troubles wait at every turn.
I share these final closing words. They are from The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. Any change may bear seeds of benefit. Seek them out. Any change may bear seeds of harm. Beware. God is infinitely malleable. God is change. Blessed be. Go in peace.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always like that, which has been described as proto-reggae.
Yes. I've never done it before. Today is